we're live.
Great.
And there's nobody on yet,
All
which
right.
I kind of expect. Oh, we now have 4 people. There's Susie Miner, there's Kat Wilder, yay, Kat. There's
Eh,
Jeannie Guy, there's Sharon Lovejoy, Brenda Porter, Nancy, Brina Clark. Hello and welcome to all who are joining. Hi, Christina. Hi, Leslie. Hi, Aya. Hi, Cindy. Welcome to all of you who are joining right now. This is Earthbound Live with the fabulous Becca Lawton. And we are going to be talking, we're going to give everybody a minute to join, but we're going to be talking about terraphilia and water and land and whatever comes up in our conversation. Becca, for those of you who don't know her, is an author, a fluvial geologist, a former Grand Canyon river guide. And by the way, her latest book of poetry is called Swimming Grand Canyon and Other Poems. And let me tell you that you will never see me swimming Grand Canyon. She's written for The Sun, Orion, Audubon, and many other journals. She's won awards, including a Fulbright Research Chair, the fabulous Ellen Malloy Award for Desert Writers. Bless your spirit, Ellen. The Willa, an original softcover fiction for her novel Junction, Utah, and the Nautilus Book Award, the Waterston Desert Writing Prize, and 3 Pushcart Prize nominations. And what she's working on now is a memoir called Boat Woman, which will come out next year. Bison Books, University of Nebraska Press, about life as an early professional oarswoman on the Colorado and other Western rivers. And Becca has written, I think, have you written 10 books? Is that right?
Yeah, 10 that are still in print.
They're still in print. Yeah, there I
Yeah.
am with my 14. And how many are in print? I think 7. Anyway, one of which I happened to have on my desk this morning. This is The Oasis this time, which came out from Torrey House, Living and Dying with Water in the West. Fabulous collection of essays. So there's Junction, Utah, there's Reading Water, and I'm not going to name all the others, but I'm just thrilled to welcome Becca to this conversation. And I also want to give just a short commercial I'm putting it up in front of my face because really I would rather see this than my face. These conversations and my Substack are named for my forthcoming book, Earthbound, A Year of Mindful Connection in Nature, which I like to say among friends, and I'm going to call you all friends, is a scientist coming out talking about Earth spirituality, which has taken me a long, long time to be able to talk about in public. But Earthbound is 52 weeks of essays, practices, poems, beautiful photos and illustrations, an encouragement, a year's worth of encouragement for us to reconnect to nature in our daily lives, not by driving somewhere fabulous where it's easy, but to find ways to connect to nature and practice our terraphilia, humans' innate love for this earth and connection with the other lives we share it with. So that's coming out in October. I'm super psyched, and I just looked at the Simon & Schuster page for it, and it's going to be distributed by Walmart and Target in addition to the usual suspects. And I was like, what? I don't actually shop at Walmart. It's too much plastic for me. And I really shop at Target. And I went, Earthbound? Walmart, Target? Okay, more power to them. So, hey. So with that, welcome those who are still joining us. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Kate. Becca, thank you for being here. It's
Having me.
It's a great pleasure to get to talk with you. Let's start
Yeah.
by talking about what terraphilia, the word, my word, might mean to you.
Well, I love that word, and I love what you're doing with it, with your daily practices and your mindfulness. And I think what it means is loving our earth, loving ourselves, loving everything on our planet, which this isn't always easy to love everything and everybody, but loving our wild creatures, they're not ours, but loving the more than human aspects of this place.
Yeah.
And I love the micro aspects that you share every day, uh, Susan, just grounds us where we are.
Yeah, I think that's my mission is the grounding us where we are because those of us who have had the good fortune like you to spend time in the Grand Canyon as a boat woman, and other fabulous wild places, that's a great thing. But most of us don't have that opportunity. And yet, our connection, our essential cell level connection with this earth and all the other beings with whom we share the planet. Ooh, bad grammar, sorry. Um, but hey, that's that's necessary for our mental health, our physical health, our spiritual health, our psychological health. And to feel like we can't have that unless we go to some truly, truly wild place impoverishes us, I think.
Yeah, well, it was great to call those places home for as long as I did. For instance,
Yeah.
when I was in Grand Canyon, that was my home, and
Yeah.
most guides who work there say that. But you're right. I mean, I don't work there anymore, and I am glad and privileged to have a home where I can watch the quail. I can watch.
Yeah.
I have a creek, as much as
Ooh,
you
nice.
own a creek, but that's connecting where you are is fine and necessary.
Talk a little bit about where you are. I love the idea that you have a creek. I didn't know that because water is so much a part of you being you in this world.
Yeah, the
Or
creek.
that you live
Yeah,
by a creek, that you share the neighborhood with a creek.
yeah. Well said. Well said. I got the creek when I got married. I married the creek, and I mean, uh,
Good choice. Good choice.
I live in a small valley. It's Sonoma Valley, Northern California, and I moved here to raise my daughter when I was becoming single with a daughter, and I wanted her to grow up in a watershed we could know the
Mm,
people. And
mm.
I actually worked as when you read my introduction and it says I'm a fluvial geologist. Well, fluvial geology is really the study of rocks, but rocks that are formed by water. And because I'm a fluvial geologist, I got a job here as a stream scientist.
Oh, I
And
love it.
so I worked in all the creeks in this watershed, and this is one of them. And I actually measured this creek, the flow in this creek before I met Paul, who I later married. And when it's flowing high and threatening to come over bank, and that means we won't be able to get off our property, then we park cars, on the
Yeah.
other side of it. But mostly it just trickles along or dries up half the year. So
Yeah.
yeah,
But even when it's not on the surface, the water is still there.
the water's there and it cools. We have a foundation that goes down to China because we had to rebuild it, and
Mm.
I think it keeps us cool. It goes all the way down to the water.
Hmm, that's interesting. I hadn't thought
Yeah.
about that. So that's a kind of passive earth and water table based cooling. I like that. I like that. Not easy to get there.
Yeah,
Um,
no, it wasn't in that part wasn't intentional, but the fluvial gravels, the alluvium here is so deep that to get down
right.
to bedrock, you have to go through a lot of stream gravels. So we are, you're
Hmm.
right, Susan, we're cooled by the gravels of the creek.
That's a lovely and intimate connection, it seems to me.
It's very
Um,
paraphiliac.
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that I hope all of us, not just you and I and this wonderful group of listeners, but I hope that all of us, we humans, will come to find something in our daily lives that we can connect to intimately that's beyond our humanness, beyond our skin boundary, to give us the experience of other in ways that are nurturing and enriching and stretch our sense of of who we are in this world and what matters in the world really.
Yeah.
And that other doesn't have to be necessarily positive. I mean, it could be the times when the creek floods and you have to park on the other side, but then then you are deeply intimately involved with that watershed.
Mhm. Yes.
And that
That's
to me is
uh,
enriching,
yeah,
you know.
great thought. We take the good with the bad and the bad with the good, and, um, the good far outweighs the bad so far, you know?
Well, I think we as humans tend to wanna put things in boxes like that, good and bad, but really that's just the natural world doing what the natural world does, and we are part of that. We like it to perform for us. We prefer the processes of this earth, which are what Sonoma Creek is doing in that case. It's, continually eroding the landscape above you and it's filling with water when there's a lot of rain and all that. We want to see it through our lens, which is, "Oh, this is good for me. Oh, this is not good for me." But it's just the creek being the creek, you know?
It's the creek being the creek. Yeah, and
So
it's in us, like you say, it's human nature to not want the tree to fall on our roof or something like that, you
right. Exactly.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
I have when you say that, I have a spruce tree that is probably as old as my house, and my house was built in 1903. Um, I have a big spruce tree on the west side of my house, the west end, and, spruces grow in riparian areas, so their roots are a platter, like, shape because the roots want to stay at the top of the soil where there's oxygen as well as water because roots have to breathe, and so they don't go down deep into that saturated soil, they go out wide, and that's lovely until you have westerly winds at 45 or 50 miles an hour, and I can watch that spruce tree because it has needles all year round, it's very densely needled, and it has quite a wind load, and I can watch it do this, the whole thing, and
Yeah,
I think, "Oh, someday you and my house are gonna have a collision," and my house isn't very big, it's 884 square feet, and that spruce tree will take out it's right on the axis that will take out the whole house, and me, because I will be sleeping in the room right that's closest to it, and I
well,
think, "Yeah,
I'm
well."
praying that the night it happens, you're out speaking at a conference or something.
I look at it as, well, alright. That's what's that's where I will end, and that would be okay.
Yeah,
That would be just okay. So,
good.
okay, so let's let me just say something to those who are listening. You are welcome to put comments in the chat, and we will respond. So if you've got questions or thoughts or comments, please put them in the chat, and I'm trying to keep an eye on that, so I'll respond. Um, tell me something talk to me somewhat about Boat Woman and why Boat Woman, why now?
Oh, wow. That's a great question because, when I wrote Reading Water, uh, it was published in 2002, and it's memoir also,
Mhm.
and I thought, well, I honestly just intended to write one book. I thought that was going to be the book, and, I went on to write, fiction, essays, just because the ideas occurred to me to keep writing, and, one reviewer wrote about Reading Water that well, a couple, that they wanted to read more. They didn't say it that nicely, but but they wanted
Hmm,
to read more a deeper dive into,
huh.
the experience of being, an early river guide who was a woman, and, so I think that feedback just kind of bounced around in my head for a long time, and I thought, "Well, if I was gonna dive deeper, what would I dive into?"
Mm,
And clearly, there's a lot of dives you can do, with water, rivers, and,
yeah.
uh, gender bias. What what was coming up more and more for me was the I was observing that every time I went back into the river culture, I noticed that it hadn't I felt it's a little too simple to say it hadn't changed much,
Oh, yeah.
but attitudes about women
Yeah.
weren't that changed, and they're not that changed in our society. And in
Yeah.
fact, there's
Yeah.
been backsliding in ways that we
Yeah.
really
Think
didn't foresee. For instance, when we were um, in the 70s, we thought, "Oh, great,
yeah.
abortion rights, all done," So with the backsliding, I thought that I really needed to write about things that I had pretty much sub suppressed in
Right.
my journals that
Yeah.
didn't make the light of day in reading water,
Yeah.
and thought, "Well, this is I'm in my 70s now. I If everybody is pissed off at me for saying these things, I'll be gone,
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, well.
but they will have been said, and they're just observations of things that happened that when I look back and read them now, I kinda go, "And you stayed in that job
Mm,
anyway," you know?
mm,
It was
mhm.
funner than
Heck,
anything
yeah.
on this planet, and it was really rewarding, but it was also really a tough,
Yeah.
uh, row to hoe, and
Yeah.
when I read the things now, I say, "Well, I responded well, for being 17
Yeah.
or 19 or whatever, and
Yeah.
having the vocabulary I had at the time. But what would I be able to say to them now, and what kind of conversation would we have?" You
Yeah.
know, like, "Well, this isn't appropriate. How can we do this differently?"
Yeah.
"If I asked you not to do this, will you honestly stop doing it?"
Yeah. Would you
I
wanna
don't
do
know.
that?
That
Yeah.
so Bold Woman is about that, and it's also, I think, fairly funny. There's a lot of funny stuff in it just because we were figuring out the boating
Right.
industry as we were building it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that's why I wrote it because I have not read a book like it yet. And and as we say, or as Maya Angelou said, well, we got to write that book if we haven't,
Right. The
if it
book we
doesn't
haven't
exist.
read.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that we wanna read.
Yeah.
Um, I wanna just address a comment, from Megan Youngme, who is watching from Peru.
Mm.
Bienvenidos. We're glad you're here. And thank you for joining us. Um, if anybody wants to, by the way, put their watershed in the comments, I would love that. I'd love to see what watersheds you're joining us from, since we're talking about water and watersheds and rivers. What comes to mind, Becca, as you talk about that, of course, is that we're close in age. And I was a young field biologist, field ecologist. In those times, I was at the bottom of the totem of field ecologists, besides being female, because I was a botanist. So I wasn't studying the big charismatic mammals or even big charismatic birds. I was studying sagebrush and wildfires and things like that, which put me right down there at the bottom, and also gender female. So I remember those days of thinking to myself, really? You're saying that to me? Really? That's your concern? Really? That's how you would treat me? And I didn't always equip myself well. I wanted to belong. I wanted to be one of the boys. So I
Exactly.
didn't always speak up, and I wish I had more, although I'm not sure it would have made a difference. It would have made a difference in my self confidence as much as anything else,
Hmm.
but I'm not sure it would have changed anything.
Yeah.
Um, and that for me is what's gonna come up in writing. Sarah Robkin's writing from is watching from the Sokol Creek watershed on the shore
Hi,
of Monterey
Sarah.
Bay.
Hi,
Hey,
Sarah.
Sarah. Kat says, "So eager for Becca's boatwoman from the Dolores River watershed,
Hi,
Southwest
Kat.
Colorado." The very dry Dolores River watershed,
Yeah.
like the North Fork of the Gunnison, darn it. Um, so glad you're both here. So glad you're all here. Um, so I think I look at field ecology now, and I look at the younger women who are coming up in science, and I did a keynote at in Wyoming, mm, for a library system that was reading Lab Girl, for their big read this year, and they invited me to come talk about being plant girl. Um, and I'm not a lab scientist, but
Yeah.
it was interesting to talk about her memoir, Hope Jaron's memoir, in the context of and I was a field scientist, and this is what was going on for me because I had a lot of young women come up talk to me later, and I said, "So is it better? What are things like?" And the answer was, "Mm." And I thought, "All right, we're better than this. You know, we need to figure out ways to not engage in what's going on now, but to live our lives in a way that we are models." Quakers have a phrase about being models, patterns, and examples for all people and all nations, which is a way of saying, live your life the way you want the world to be.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we all can do in these times that maybe it's just a small light, but it's a light all the same. And if all of us hold up our small lights, then that will make a difference. So when I hear you talk about the boating days, I think, oh yeah, we can be the people we want. We can act the way we want people to treat us. We can model for other people how we want the world to work. That's what comes to mind to me.
Well,
Um,
I think whether it changes anybody's behavior or not, it's definitely the way we want to live. It's the way we
yeah,
want to feel about the way we live. It's
yeah.
so yeah, we completely agree on that.
There's a sense in which that's the ultimate power in the good sense that we have is to be the people that we want the world to look like, you know, and I don't mean white, and old. I mean, be the generous, compassionate, thoughtful, welcoming people that we want the world to be for everyone and all other species too. Um,
Yeah, it's part of your terraphilia. We are part of the philia to love. We
yes,
Self-love is
exactly.
so huge, and it's one of the hardest loves to have.
It is, especially now. Okay, we have comments. Megan Youngme from Peru says, gosh, women in recent generations have no idea how it was to be the only woman on a team of men with the cultural norms of that time. Yeah, that's a good thing. Thank you guys for leading the charge to be voicing as the feminine. And, that's a really interesting point, Megan, because as a scientist, the things that women do in science have not been valued. We are relational thinkers. We are compassionate thinkers. We value intuition and intuitive leaps. And all those are critical for science. And science has not valued them. But they're the way science does its work best, honestly, is integrating the feminine model into science.
I'll
So,
add to that.
yeah.
Yeah, that until women came along in the boating world and revolutionized rowing,
Mm, hmm.
uh, people were working too hard. People
Yeah.
were not using the water in
Yeah.
a way,
Working with the water.
working with the water, letting the
Yeah.
water do the work with our
Yeah.
help, you know?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we revolutionized rowing, and I know I was among the the first women doing that because I was one of the first women allowed to actually row boats
Right.
as opposed to
Right.
paddling
As
boats,
opposed to paddling. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Where you have a whole group of people paddling, and it's very different when you are the sole power on that boat and the sole navigator and keeping that boat moving. And you do have to work with the water because
well,
it's
everyone
gentle.
does, I was recently profiled in a book where it was interesting because the author was talking about how, um, the the men were saying the boats were too heavy. In my chapter, he said I wasn't strong enough, it's sort of like,
Mm,
"No, the boats were too heavy," it's like, let's just leave it at that. And so, um, but it was what you're talking about, a different way of thinking
yes.
that allowed me to work more with the water
Yeah.
than I had seen them do, and there were really great boatmen who taught me a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
what I know, but I also helped take it a
Yeah.
a step farther.
I think the interesting thing about when we view the world through the lens of one person or gender or culture's talents, we forget that there's this whole richness of knowledge and understanding and way of behaving that makes the world a whole, that brings other gifts to the way we operate in the world and the way we are with the world. And
Yeah.
I want to go back to comments here. Virginia Winter, listening from Wonderland Creek, Boulder Creek watershed.
Hi, Jean.
Yeah. And Carol Kay says, Becca, clearly your affinity for water and words runs deep. On your wall, we see family photos as if ancestors are looking over your shoulder. Do any of those folks guide you on your life's path? A great question.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that. You
It's a
know,
great question.
just right here, this fellow can
Mm-hmm.
see that little tiny picture there.
Mm-hmm.
I'll bring him down. This is my grandfather, Frost, my mother's side.
Uh-huh.
He he was a Adirondack guide. He
Ooh,
had an oar boat that they call guide boats, and they were rowed, but they shaped like canoes. And he passed down to my mother his skills with the outdoors. She was a naturalist. She taught my entire family to be outside with the more than human world.
world.
And my brother Tim isn't up there, but he was the first in our family to become a whitewater guide, and I followed him right into it. And that was the way things worked. You know, families helped other family members get
Right.
hired, or
Yeah.
you know.
So
Uh,
how old were you when you first took the oars in a boat on a river?
I was 18. I had started at
Wow.
17, and then 18 I said, "Well, I'm going to row because I'd like to get down to the Grand Canyon."
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah,
That's great.
yeah.
That's great. Um, on your mom and teaching you to be in the more than human world, the essay, the first full essay in the Oasis this time, the one called The Sentinels, about your family vacations to Southern California, to see palm oases. Just what a
Yeah.
great. I grew up with that same kind of
Oh, awesome.
childhood. And what a great way to get introduced to the outdoors and the world of more than human beings. So I loved that essay.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm so lucky. It was so low key, and so, just fling your sleeping bag, honestly,
Mhm,
just out on the ground. And so by the
mhm.
time I was a boat woman, it was like, this is like old home week, honestly.
Yeah, this is what we do. I remember a time when my family was backpacking and we took the Durango Silverton narrow gauge train and got off the train and went backpacking from it. And this was before backpacking was cool. And it was the middle 1960s probably. So I was probably 10. And as we got off the train, people were taking pictures of us. It was my parents and my brother and I. People are taking pictures of us. My mom with her pack frame with 4 bedrolls lashed to it. My dad with his army surplus pack, and my brother and I with um, our smaller knapsacky type packs, all army surplus, all cheap because my dad didn't buy anything new if he could help it, because it cost money. We're getting off the train. People are taking pictures of us, and I'm like, okay. And there are people saying to my parents, "Are you gonna make the kid to sleep out overnight?" And my dad said, and I hope they realized this was a joke, "Oh, we're just gonna drop them off along the trail somewhere and see if they find their way back." And, we climbed a drainage way high into the San Juan Mountains and rolled out our bedrolls under the stars. And I woke up in the night lying next to my brother on the ground in one of those, the vinyl bottom, flannel top sleeping bags that are
Oh, yeah.
rectangular. Um, I woke up hearing my brother going, "Susan, get off me. Get off me." I sit up and he is kicking at what is on the bottom of his sleeping bag, and it's a porcupine. Our sleeping bags had accumulated enough sweat and salt
Oh,
that the porcupine was eating, was licking and chewing on the bottom of his salty sleeping bag. So, yeah, that
that's
was, yeah, that was, there were wild childhood stories. Fortunately, he was kicking the porcupine's belly. You know, if you're gonna
yeah,
kick a
yeah.
porcupine, you wanna be under your feet under it so that you don't get the quills embedded in you. Um, so I wanna ask you one more question in particular, and that is if you are thinking about people who don't get out in the wild often, who aren't able to, maybe aren't ever able to, what is a technique or a tip or an idea you would give them for connecting with nature on a daily basis? Is there one sort of exercise or, I don't know, you know, some kind of practice?
Yeah, well, I want to say two things. One is for myself, um, watching birds. You know,
Mm,
it's a easy and there are birds everywhere, and
mhm,
it's incredibly addicting. And you meet the most quirky, fun, most interesting people doing it. And having said that, um, I also agree with Robin Wall Kimmerer on this, and then she says, "Start a garden,
mm,
even if it's just in a wine barrel, on your porch.
mhm,
There's nothing that'll get you out, um, to check and see if anything's grown overnight type of thing or,
right.
if it needs water or and then from there, you'll see the birds, you'll see the
Mhm,
insects, you'll see
mhm,
you'll smell the air, maybe it's just a sea breeze, but it's like I think those 2 things
mhm.
just about anyone can do. And, um, and so that's those are 2 easy places to start, I think.
Those are great ideas. I have, uh, I'm a plant person because I grew up in a family of bird watchers, and studying plants was my self defense. They do not get up early, and they do not migrate through strange places like sewage lagoons in the Intermountain West, which is the only water for miles. And so, if you want to see the red-legged hoo-ha that's never been seen in, Northwest Wyoming before, you go to the nearest sewage lagoon at 4 in the morning to
Yeah,
watch it.
you don't wanna
So,
do.
because I was raised doing that, being yanked out of my comfortable spot with a
Yeah,
book inside and taken to the sewage lagoon to see whatever sandpiper that was or whatever, I fell in love with plants. They were
nice.
so much more obliging. But as Sharon Lovejoy says, "Yes, start a garden." One
Right
of the
on,
things.
Sharon.
Yeah, she's the ultimate. For those of you who don't know Sharon Lovejoy, she is the ultimate person to learn about gardening and the joys and wonders of gardens, both for yourself and any kids you're around of any age. Um, um, I I have through the years always had a native plant garden, and through the years for me means I was married to an academic, and we moved quite a few times over his career. And then after he died, and I was widowed at 55, I moved a lot of times trying to figure out where I belonged in the Intermountain West, in my sagebrush country, part of the Intermountain West. So in the last 15 years, I've moved 11 times. And not all those times have I been able to plant a garden, but I've always had 5 or 6 pots out on
Good.
my deck or my front porch with native plants in them. So penstemons and things native to my region. And in my little house in central Colorado, I had a steel mesh deck because it was above ground and the roof above it shed the snow onto the deck, and I didn't want to shovel it. I wanted it to go through the mesh deck. So I didn't really have garden space there. I put 6 pots out there with native plants. And one day I looked out, and sitting next to on the railing of that deck, sitting next to it, a steel mesh railing, next to one of the penstemons that was in bloom, was a calliope hummingbird, the
Mm,
smallest hummingbird we have on this continent. Very tiny. They look like a large bumblebee, was sitting perched on the mesh, sticking its bill into the penstemon to feed. It wasn't even hovering.
Yes.
And so my little pot garden had attracted a hummingbird I had never seen before in the downtown of the town I lived in, which
That's
was super
great.
cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
so
to that, when I worked at the ecology center where we did the stream work, when people said, "How can I get more birds in our yard?" We had
mhm,
this book that we handed out called Bringing the Birds Back, and it was planting native gardens.
yeah.
So you're what you're doing is we've done that here, and we're seeing more California quail this year than ever. We've got
Mm,
all kinds of nesting birds, and,
yeah,
it's not because 'cause we've recently planted natives, it's that they're coming back after, some die-offs due to disease and stuff that have been valley-wide, and,
mhm,
uh but, yeah, if you don't wanna grow vegetables to eat, uh, we have those in a special place where they can't get out and
yeah.
mess with natives, you know?
I
So
always try to do natives and my edibles. I love edible gardening, because the natives bring in the pollinators and also the, insects and birds that eat the aphids and the other ones.
right, right, they get in
Um,
perfect, yeah.
yeah, a friend of mine, Lauren Springer, um, who's a noted garden designer here and landscape designer in Colorado and that area. She said that she had planted an agave in her garden at one point and saw that the whole bloom stalk was covered with aphids. And she was like, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" And the
Uh-huh,
next day, a pair of orioles spent all day grooming the aphids off of that bloom stalk. And
be
that's when that was part of her, like, religious conversion to growing native plants. She was like, "Oh my god, there's a relationship there." And I
Mm,
think that's the point for me of adding native plants wherever you are, even if it's just a few, because you're nurturing the relationships that hold the whole community together, that make our lives possible.
yeah,
So that's
well
my
done.
thing.
Yeah, good, good.
Um and, do you have other things you wanna say, other thoughts? Do you wanna read for just a short bit? We're actually over time, but I'm not gonna make a big deal about that. Um, is there a
Okay,
short thing you'd like
yeah,
to read?
I do have something I'd read, no more comments? Any
Um,
questions from people or
if you have questions out there, Sharon Lovejoy also said container gardens are mini worlds. Absolutely. Um, absolutely. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. Oh, Sharon wants to know how much land you have where you are.
Oh, we're just on a quarter acre, and that's it's just rip roaring full of birds and native plants, so,
Mm,
and then having a creek is very helpful because the riparian belt is the most diverse ecosystem that it's the most climate
yeah.
resistant, so it's honestly just a glorified drainage ditch that we've put a ton of natives on, so,
Well,
yeah.
I restored an urban creek with native plants, that had been dredged and channelized. Megan from who's calling in from Peru says, "I've been obsessed with regenerative agriculture to rebuild water tables, watching practices of beaver restoration, as well as connected with an indigenous women who bless the waters." Oh, that's lovely. My sons and I have a deep connection with nature. Love the native plants. Beaver
Yeah.
restoration is primo. It's amazing. So,
Yes. Very important on the Yampa River. Uh, r
everywhere,
yeah.
you know,
Well, um,
read,
so
please.
okay. There's a new book out by Heather Hansman, who wrote about 3 important women in conservation, or not conservation, but who inspired our love for the outdoors, and I
Mhm.
haven't read it yet. I did talk to her when she was working on it, but one of the women she highlights is Georgie White Clark, uh,
Mm,
Clark White. She mixes up the order of those names sometimes, but, um, who was the first commercial outfitter in the Grand Canyon. Um, Not just the first woman, but she pioneered commercial rafting in the Grand Canyon for better or for worse. That's how she made her living. And so I have this from the collection Swimming Grand Canyon. The title poem, I'll just read. It's about Georgie. Swimming Grand Canyon. 1. Georgie wore leopard print swimsuits or cyan sun pants. Long ago the wind leathered her skin. She squinted above my cap, though the sun was not in her eyes, and she claimed she didn't mind flipping boats on the river. A can of beer in both hands, clinging at 6 a.m. at Lee's Ferry. She said it again. Having a boat flip in the rapids is a way of life for me, and an enjoyable one at that. She stood with her lead boatman, smiling, a burly man, naked from the waist up. Behind them, swampers had been rigging boats since before dawn. 2. Georgie first swam Grand Canyon when it was warmer before the dam. She started on the river after the death of her only girl, keeping at it until she died at 81. She became legend, woman of the river. 3. Having a boat flip means water so cold it chills your brain. Next, your limbs go numb. To fall in water rooted from black-bottomed Lake Powell is to swim with legs of lead, bound by the rule of 50. In 50-degree water, it's 50-50. You'll live 50 minutes. 4. Georgie always said if she could find a man who gave her the same thrill as the river, she would marry him. As she spoke, she never looked straight at me. Her stare hurled into the distance. Maybe she saw clearly what was ahead and didn't care. Within 2 years, she'd lost 2 more. 1, her smiling lead boatman. 1, her best friend washed out at Lava Falls. Nothing could bring back Rose, her lost darling. Swimming Grand Canyon is a way of life for me, and an enjoyable one at that.
Wow.
Thank you.
That's amazing. I mean, that's just incredible. Person, poem, portrait, the whole deal.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you for this time together.
What a great way to end this conversation. Thanks to all who joined us.
Yeah.
I said these would be half an hour and we've gone over by 12 minutes, but hey, it was just we packed a lot in. And we could talk obviously for a lot longer, but I want to keep these at a length that people can easily listen. So thanks to all who joined us. Becca, thank you so much
Thank
for,
you, Susan, and thank you everybody for being here.
yeah. So I'm gonna press the end button, which means we all go away. But thank you all for being here. Blessings.